Hello everyone, I am Ron and I am the game design instructor for the Academy of Entertainment Arts over at Dixie Hollins High School. If you are one of my students, it's Mr. Flowers to you, and welcome to this video tutorial. Alright, and welcome back. What we're going to be doing in this video is showing you how to make a brick texture to go on our walls here. Last time we made this wonderful wood floor, and it turned out pretty well. This time I want to make a red brick sort of thing to kind of go on these walls here. Alright, so let's hop to it. Jump back down into Photoshop. File. New. And like before, we're going to use T underscore for our texture. And then I'm going to say red brick. We could have like blue brick or green bricks or like a white stucco. But right now I'm just going to do red brick. Again, I'm going to do 2048. Once again, the reason I want to do this particular file size is this is a good size that I can run on my computer just fine. I can probably run a little bit higher. But game packages and whatever not, you want to make sure that this stuff isn't going to go like memory heavy and make it so that your game is bogged down by having too much stuff in it. So this should work just fine. We should get enough detail. And I'm going to go ahead and unlock my layer. Now there are a few ways we can go about doing this. You could grab your selection tool, draw out a little rectangle, and fill in your color. And then we can copy this rectangle over and over and over again. Photoshop does have some really neat pattern tools, and you can like make one brick and then just paint the pattern over again. Or you can do it kind of the way that I'm going to do it here, a lot like we did before. I'm going to grab two different colors. This time I'm going to grab two shades of red. I'm going to grab like a nice dark red here, and then I grab a slightly lighter red. That's probably fine right there. We go up to Filter, Render, Clouds. And this is probably a little bit too red. We can desaturate this if we want to. We can go into Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. And let's tone this down some. So hue adjusts your color value. Saturation determines how much or how little of that color is influenced on your image. Lightness has to do with how bright or how dark your image is. And I'm just kind of playing with this to see what I think looks good for me. If I go way over, I'm not getting anything that I like out of here. I hit cancel. Okay, so what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go to Filter, Noise. And what noise is going to do is it's going to add some speckling to our image. If you ever look at like real brick, it has this speckly appearance to it. And there we go. It's just subtle. It's very, very subtle. If you zoom in, you can see it. Control. You can see the speckles. Alright, so I'm going to turn this one into a brick. So I'm going to go up to Edit, Free Transform, and I'm going to scale this down to the size of a brick. that I would like. And I think that's good. Again, you can make this thinner or longer or whichever, but I think this is going to work. I'm going to hit the checkbox for OK. And then grab my move tool. I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard. And I'm going to click, drag, snap this one together. One, two, three, 4 taps on my arrow key. And it doesn't have to be that precise. Again, a little bit of natural chaos is fine. You can have these spaced a little off. They don't have to be perfect. What you're going to have to watch for, though, is when you get to the edges. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. So, when we get to the edge, we want this edge and this edge to line up. A lot like we did before, we could cut a new, grout line. But what we could do instead is we can anticipate how this pattern is going to work. And I'm going to show you what I mean as I go along. This guy, I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to Alt-click drag. I'm going to put this one right in the middle of these. Okay. And what I'm doing is I'm planning for the fact that these bricks are going to loop around, and I need to have this small brick. And I'm going to show you how to make that small brick. So here we are, we get into this little half brick section. This one you're going to separate off. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one we're going to bring over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when these two bricks meet, they should, in theory, make a whole brick. This guy, which one is he? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There he is. Okay, now that I have two rows, I'm going to grab the top row, grab the bottom. Remember, I'm using Shift and then clicking down to the last one to jump all the way through. You could also hold Control and click each individual one, but click the top one, hold Shift, click the bottom, he'll grab all of them. And merge together. So now instead of dragging this all the way down, or each brick individually, I can drag this whole thing. But what I'm going to do, since I have a little bit of space off of each side, I'm going to see if I can get this guy to even up. So I'm just eyeballing it so that this brick should be exactly half of this brick, and this brick and this brick should be almost perfectly sized. And just eyeballing it, looks like it'll probably work right there. If you wanted to, you can go up to View, go down to New Guide, Vertical, because we want a guide to split in the middle, and I can say 50%, 50, and then use the percent symbol, and that'll put a guide right down the middle, and it can help you line up your image. And I think that is smack dab in the middle. It's pretty close. The only thing that kind of drives me nuts is right here in this center line, but that has to do with my spacing being uneven because, of course, I didn't make it perfect all the way through. But this should be pretty center. I'm going to go up to View. I'm going to go Clear Guides, get rid of my guide. And now I'm going to just drag this down. Once more. And I'm just kind of going through my layers, picking on my grout line. And it's okay if there's a little bit of space here. Remember, this has to loop around. So this being a space is going to make a grout line that attaches to these bricks up here, and vice versa. The only thing we're going to have to fix left and right are the seams here. Like this brick and this brick should match. This brick needs to have a seam. This one and this one should match. This one needs a seam. And this one should match. Alright, I'm going to grab the top layer, Shift, grab the bottom layer, right click, merge, and now I'm going to create my grout line. For my grout, I'm going to use two different shades of gray. I'm just going to go ahead and punch them in here. I'm going to use 200 all the way through, so almost white but not quite. And then for my other color, I'm going to do this one, say 125. And I'm just kind of picking these numbers at random. But that should work. Filter. I'm not going to do clouds. Instead, I'm going to grab my bucket tool. Remember, if you don't see your bucket tool here, it might be underneath the gradient tool. Click and hold. Grab your bucket. I'm going to swap to the lighter of the two colors. And make sure I have my grout layer, the empty one here. Go ahead and dump that in. When you do this, you want to make sure that nothing is ever 100% black and not 100% white. So shades of gray is just fine. And now that I have that one, I'm going to go to File, Noise. I'm going to add noise. And that should work. So that way when we get up close to this, like if we're a character and we're walking up close, and we happen to see this, we'll see these little pits in here. And you can get more into detail with this as you go. Like we can grab our levels. We can push the graininess of this if you really wanted to. I'm not going to, but that's just an option available to us. Okay. So now that I have this, in the event that I need to modify my grout layer, I'm going to actually save these guys as a group. So brick, and double click on the name. I'm just going to change this one to grout. Select both, drag them down to this middle folder right here. And this is going to be my diffuse layer, because our diffuse is the one that has our color and our pattern, right? Okay. Now before we go any further, we want to make sure that we crop these. So I'm going to select all. And it doesn't really matter if you have both of these layers selected or not. When you crop something, it crops the entire canvas. It doesn't matter what else is there. So I'm going to hit Image, Crop. So long as I have the entire canvas selected, the rest of these guys should get cropped as well. So now if I grab my brick, I'm actually going to grab the layer so I move both pieces. There they are. See? So just like before when we were doing the wood texture, we want to make sure that these are going to line up. So we go up to Filter, Nope, it's not gonna let me do it that way. You can grab the brick, filter, other, offset, and set the bottom to 0, set this one to 1024. Okay. So there is a small seam right here that could be a problem, because this brick is a little bit smaller than the other bricks, so that could be an issue. Hit OK. I'm going to zoom in. On the large brick, I'm going to grab my erase tool. Because I have these on two separate layers, I can't, and I have the speckling, I can't just paint it, because I'd have to go and redo my my noise. So instead, I'm going to use the paint, the erase tool. It's this guy, it looks like an eraser. Grab the solid brush, and just make sure that my brush size is the size of my grout. Now I can click and hold Shift. Whoops. Make sure you have the correct layer selected. I need to be on the brick layer. Click, hold Shift. Click, hold Shift. Oops, I didn't mean to take a bite out of that bottom one. Alright. So to fix this seam, we're going to use our clone stamp tool. So grab our clone stamp, hold Alt, take a sample, change the size of my brush. There we go. Grab a sample. And I'm just very quickly kind of going through this. Again, the more time that you take on this, the better it's going to look. And it looks like I'll have to come through and cut that away. Grab this sample. Okay. To fix this little piece that I painted on, I'm going to grab my erase tool. Again, grab my brush, or sorry, my erase tool, hold, click and hold for Shift, back and forth. Fantastic. Whoops. I didn't mean to get that one. filter, offset, set it back to 0, filter, other, offset. Again, horizontal is going to be 0. Our vertical is going to change to 1024. And it looks like it looped around just fine. There's no seam that I have to fix, which is fantastic. Sometimes it works out in our favor. Okay. Alright, so from here, what we're going to do is we're going to test this to see how it looks in the engine. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and that should be fine. That's for our PSD file. I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to change this to the redbrick_D for diffuse. And then under my drop down here, I'm going to go to Targa, Save As, there we go. Jump into Unreal and open up my image browser. You could right click in here and go to Import and then navigate that way. I just don't like navigating through that window. I'd rather do it through here. There's just an appeal, I guess, that I have to drag and drop versus oops, wrong thing. My textures. Drag and drop versus digging through files and files and files of things. And I want T underscore red brick. So there we go. Here's T underscore red brick. Diffuse. Bring that in. Give it a second. Right click, create material. And I was being impatient. There we go. You see right away when we put that in, our view dimmed because Unreal compensates. There's a little light mass interpolation. The process goes through all that and says, hey, you know, we have this here. Now the light's going to reflect a certain way, and it dims everything, which is kind of cool. I like the way it works. All right. So you can see we have an anomaly right here. And that's where these two pieces meet. Yeah. Might be able to fix that actually inside the editor here. Grid this one. That one worked out fine. This one's a little off. I'm going to click on one of my surfaces over here in my Details tab. I'm going to go down to Geometry where it says Select. And I'm going to grab all matching material. Alignment. I'm going to do Align Surface Planar Wall. And that should line everything up. So there we go. Our texture is, for the most part, it is seamless. You can't hardly even notice this short brick. You have to kind of look for it, which is cool. Okay. Now last time when we did for our wood, we made a bump map so it kind of popped out. We're going to do that for this as well. There are a few other tricks we can do to make these bricks more lively. Let's jump down to Photoshop, grab our brick layer. Now if we do this, we might have to go back in and fix our edges. But if you double click just outside the name, or conversely you can right click and go down to blending options. Either way we'll get there. Double click. We go and grab our blending options and we say add a drop shadow. The drop shadow, you see how that works? It pushes these bricks just ever so subtly off of the page. See that? Just by having the shadow there. I'll toggle it off. See, they're flat. Bam, they're back on. This is one of those lighting tricks that I was talking about as far as creating a bump map. Normal maps do this as well. We can go actually into the drop shadows options here, and we can adjust the sizing of that shadow. If we go too big, it kind of gets crappy, so you want to make sure you don't go too big. 3 is probably fine. Now I'm going to bring up my spread. See how this is getting weird on the edges? That's one of those things we'd have to go through and kind of fix that as we go through. Distance will, of course, change how far away the shadow is from the actual object. I think, though, I'm going to leave that at 0, this at 5. Let's bring this up. Nope, drop shadow has to be some distance away. Okay, I'm going to toggle off drop shadow. I want to take a look at how inner shadow affects what we're doing. I can make it Mario bricks. Do 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 do. Copyright. Da, 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 da. That looks kind of neat, though. Alright, that's not what we're going for. And then our other option down here, bevel and edges. How's that? Just that being on there looks really nice. Again, it gives us that popped out effect without really overdoing it. But we will have an issue when this wraps, and I'll show you. If I hit OK, and I go to offset, and let me go right to where it's 1024 in the horizontal. And it looks like it's working, but I have a suspicion that it's not really working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this down, create a new layer, merge, and I'm going to hide that one. That's filter, other, offset, and there I go. I was correct. See that? The reason when we do this one and we apply the effects, you're like, oh yeah, it looks cool, and we go ahead and do our offset, and there's no split here. The reason for that, this is still being rendered, and this uses a little bit of a lighting effect inside of Photoshop that readjusts itself based on the pixels that are here and the current light source. So as we rotate or do the offset on this, the light source updates to its position. So that's going to be a problem when we actually bring this over into the game, because once we compress the image, this is what we're going to be left with. So we would have to go through and physically change the flattened version, which is fine. We can come in here, we can manually change this, you know, make sure that this is a dark edge, make sure this is a light edge. Same thing using the clone stamp tool. I can grab that, make sure I have that layer, clone stamp, oops, I keep grabbing outside the layer. And keep in mind that you want that when you do your clone stamp, um, that little plus sign that's in the corner to my left here, you want that to be away from your brush circle. The closer it is to your brush, and the closer it is to the edge of your brush that you're approaching, the more. See how it's going outside of my sample area, and now I'm painting this edge. So you have to kind of keep an eye on that. Now I have Mario in my head, thank you. Remember what I said? The more that we do to this to make it look more realistic, the more time we have to take with it, and that is turning out to be very true, right? That line's going to be so subtle. Now I could just cheat this entire thing and do this. This is a way of cheating. I'm going to select this center. Copy it and just paste it over that. Clone stamp. I'm going to switch off, change my brush. I'm going to grab this speckly one. I think this will work. Nope, grabbing too far on the edge there. And again, I just want to emphasize the more time you take with this, the better your results are always going to be. So for this one, do the same thing as before. I'm just going to copy and paste over grab my move tool and use my arrow key just to line up that seam here, and I'm going to paint over it. Now if you're using the little spray paint speckly brush that I'm using, you'll get slightly better results if you click and move as opposed to just clicking and dragging. When you click and drag, it just kind of smudges. Alright, going down to the next one. Grab a move tool. You can see these are misaligned, so we'll go ahead and tap that down. If you're going to be applying a normal map to this method right here might be a bad idea, because you can see this top edge is lighter, this bottom edge is darker, and that's just creating a simulated shadow. The world that we're in is assuming the light is coming from the top, so this top edge is catching the light, this face is catching the light, this bottom edge is not catching light, so that's going to be darker. When you throw a normal on here, the normal is going to ignore which direction the light is actually coming from, and it's going to create a very similar effect with the with these edges, but these are going to be highlighted in different hues, and those are going to be determining what kind of lighting results to apply based on the direction of the light. So this is where we're actually baking an artificial shadow onto this, and we're going to apply a bump map. If we're going to apply a normal, we would skip this and allow the normal to do its job. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we start using Nduo to create our normal maps. Got a little too close to my edge there. Sometimes when I do this, I feel like I'm Bob Ross, you know, making little pretty clouds and painting on my pretty little trees. Not quite, huh? Ah, got that one. Alright, that should do it for that edge. And then I'm going to take this top layer, because as we went ahead and basically pasted that little edge piece in, we've created separate layers. And if I turn this layer off, you can see it jump off. See? So I'm going to select that one, select the bottom, right click, merge, and that's going to make those solid. And then I'm going to go back to my offset filter, another offset. And check my vertical. My vertical should be fine, but I'm going to double check it anyway. And it does look good. I don't see any seams that I'm going to have to fix. Alright. So I'm going to throw this guy into our diffuse. And I'm going to have this one turned on instead of the blended one. I'm going to keep the blended one around in case I want to go back and readjust this at some point. Also, I want to keep this around so that when we decide to do normal maps, we can just pull this FX channel off, or node, we can pull that off, and then we'll still have a flat version that we can use for later. Alright. Let's go see how this is going to look in the game. Go ahead and save our work. Save as. We're going to, again, make this a targa. If I come in here, look for the one that I had before, grab it, just save over. And I'm going to quickly re-import. So click on our texture, right click, re-import. Alright, so without even applying a bump map,
we've created the illusion that these guys are sticking out, just subtly. See? We don't even have a bump channel added to this yet. Let's go do that. Jump back into Photoshop. I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard, click and drag my diffuse. I'm going to turn my diffuse off. Change this one to bump. And inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually merge all these together. Because I don't need all three of these in this case. I just want to flatten this out and then create a grayscale. So, merge. Rename this to bump. Photoshop doesn't usually care about naming conventions. You can have bump and bump and bump and bump. Usually it'll give you like a 1 or a 2 or whichever, but it's not as picky as some other programs. So just be aware of that. If you're naming things the same, you know which one you're naming. Alright, so go up to Mode. And if I were to come in here to show you, if I were to throw this as a grayscale, it's going to give us a warning. It's going to say, hey, if you do this, you're going to be changing the appearance of all of your layers. So, are you sure you want to do that? And the answer to that is no, we don't want to do this. We're going to cancel. And we're just going to change one of the images. And the only image we're changing is our bump image. So, I'm going to change that black and white. Hit OK. Now, unlike the wood grain texture that we made, when we turn this into a grayscale, it gave us results that we don't really want, and we can actually see how this is going to work. If I drop this into the engine right now, this darker area is going to appear as though it's lower on the page, basically, than this lighter area. So our grout is going to look like it's sticking out. And unless if that's a look that you want, you know, more power to you. But normally, that's not how that goes. So I'm going to show you how that's going to work. Targa. And I'm going to change this T underscore D to an underscore B for bump. Jump back into Unreal. And let's drop in our bump map. Double click on our material. It's taking a minute. Hopefully Unreal didn't crash on me. Sometimes it does that. It may have crashed. Let's take a look here. Alright, so for you, this is going to be instantaneous jump. For me, it's going to take about a minute. Okay, welcome back. Actually, it did crash, so I had to actually re-import everything, so that took a minute. Okay, so again, that comes back to saving smart, saving often, and I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. File, save all. You want to make sure that when you're in Unreal and you want to save all of the stuff that we've imported, go ahead and save all. If you just go to save level, it'll save the geometry that we've brought in, but it's not going to save any of the assets that we've imported. So, okay. So I've got my bump map loaded in. I'm going to open up my material. And like before, I'm just going to drag and drop this in. And use our bump offset node to come over to our palette, search box, bump, offset. We just want to use the basic one. We'll get into what the advanced one does later on. Plug our output into our UVs. And if you don't remember what UVs do, they are there to tell the renderer where to draw the image onto the piece of geometry. I'm going to drag our color channel into our height. Grab a flat surface. You can see there's some really wigged out results with our bump map. Let me drop this down. 0.03. And then I'll hit apply. So what it's trying to do, you can kind of see this here, it's trying to make it so that the grout is jumping off the page instead of our brick, but because of our simulated shadow, our shadow is trying to tell your eye that the brick is jumping off the page, and you actually have a visual conflict here. If you pan around, you'll see sort of where this breaks as far as the illusion goes. And what we need to do is we need to flip or invert the color of our bump map so that our raised areas are the bricks and the recessed areas are the grouts. Or, if I can English well, is the grout. Alright, so I'm going to come back into Photoshop, Image, Adjustments, Invert. And I'm not really happy with that because of this edge here. Let me undo that and see what I've got. Looks like we're going to have more of that issue with this one. Might be able to get away with it. But like before, we're going to have to soften the edges. So I'm going to go in my blur, Gaussian blur. And mine is set to 10 by default. Yours might be 1 or 0. So this is what 1 looks like. 5. I think 10's too strong. I'm going to go to 5. Oops, not 15. 5. Let's see how that works. Looks like I might have some lost pixels here. That might be a problem when we tile. Let me take a look. Filter. Offset. Yeah, I'm going to have an issue with that. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to nuke this. This is why we always copy and save our work. So I'm going to grab these two. Hold Alt on the keyboard, move them back down. Put them inside of our bump area. Once again, I will check how this offset's going to affect everything. Filter, other. Okay. Merge these two. Test it again. How fascinating. I'm going to see what's happening with our grout. There might be an issue with our grouts as it shifts. So yeah, we're going to move these. Nope, I don't see any issues here. It's alright, I'm going to make another copy of that as we blend these together. Or merge them together, I should say. Merge. Filter. Other. Offset. Alright, so these dead pixels aren't showing through in this case because I have this one on. See? It's just a cheap way to beat the system. So when I render this out, hopefully those dead pixels won't be there. I could merge these together, but I don't think that'll get the result that I want. I can try it. Merge them anyway. And a lot of this stuff is trial and error, so if it doesn't look good the first time, and it actually seems like it's going to work. Sure, I'll roll with that. Change this back to bump. And readjust its scale, color scale. Image adjustments, invert. And you may actually be better off when you do this to use the one that doesn't have the raised edges that we created. But when we blur this, I don't think it'll matter. Because again, the simulated shadow we put on there is telling your eye that the edge is popping out, whereas that's after we invert it shows the edge popping out. But the bump map will read that edge as a little bit different. Anyway, 5% blur. I'm going to resave and save my image. Make sure I have the correct one, B_B, or T_B. Come back in, minimize, re-import, and if we look at our bricks, they are jumping off, pushing out just a bit, as we intended. You gotta love bump maps. I'm going to show you what this does with the normal. It looks really cool when you use normals on here. I'm going to jump in here once more. I'm just going to adjust this. I want to see what it looks like at 0.05. That's the default setting. And if you're ever confused about where I'm finding these numbers, like if you're like, hey, I don't see these, that just means you're not holding on to your bump offset. You've clicked off somewhere. So make sure that you've clicked onto your bump offset, and that's where these numbers are. And again, you just want to make sure that you're getting enough bump, enough of a raised appearance with the least amount of distortion. And this gives me a little bit more distortion than I want, so 0.03 is probably my best bet. Yeah, so I get a good bump, I get a good raise without having all the squiggly, distorted lines. I'm going to hit OK. And let this happen over here. I'm going to click play so I can see it in game. I keep doing that. And there you have it. You have some basic bricks, a basic wood floor. And it's good enough on the eye that it looks like it looks like brick, it looks like a floor, right? Okay. See what other kind of textures you guys can come up with. Later on we'll go over making like a cobblestone, maybe a lava floor for like a cave or something. Alright, have a good one.